The brother's name was Rashad Jones, and he sued Merrill Lynch, and he just won $9.5 million because apparently he had a bad financial advisor that allegedly did some really crazy stuff with his money. And I personally, I thought it was interesting because when you've been around kind of doing this sort of thing, you see a little bit of everything, and he's not the first person to be victimized in this way. And also, the reality is that sometimes when you're talking about a big company like Merrill Lynch, you're going to have some bad apples inside that company. I have money with Merrill Lynch. I don't think Merrill is a place that is going to rip you off, but I do think that they're a place that should be accountable if they have an advisor that rips you off. And so, what I thought would be really interesting is to kind of do a black wealth exercise and sort of do an autopsy and kind of see what happened here. And I'm happy for him. I'm glad he won the lawsuit. I'm glad he got his money back. But also, there's a few little things that we can kind of pick off and learn from some of this because there's a lot of financial fraud that's happening publicly and privately in terms of people managing money, but also just generally. Sometimes you'll see people raising money publicly. They go on the Breakfast Club and raise $10 million or something, and then it turns out to be something other than what people thought it was going to be. And so really, one of the biggest things about wealth is when you talk about wealth and the protection of wealth and the growing of wealth, trust becomes a really big issue. And what happens with trust is that trust can be violated when you see somebody else get violated. So when you see something happen and it doesn't work out, then suddenly everybody says, see, that's why I don't trust black financial advisors, or that's why I don't trust these types of people. Now, I don't know about the advisors for Reshad, though. I don't know if his advisors are black or white. One of them, his name is Isaiah Williams, Isaiah T. Williams. I'd be curious to know. Let me see if I can find a picture. And not that this matters. This is not at all an indictment of black people. We can't take responsibility for every crazy person out here. But it does speak in terms of stereotypes, right? There is a stereotype that black men can't be trusted with other people's money, and also there is an issue in terms of sometimes brothers want to trust brothers, and not every brother is your brother, if you know what I mean. Not every brother, and he is black. I'm looking at the picture right now, and again, I'm sure there's more to it, but I think that there were some indictments and stuff like that involved. But I want to sort of stray away from some of that stuff. I don't want to get messy, but I think that we've all seen this before, right? We've all seen this kind of thing happen. So anyway, one thing I want to do is send out a text message for everybody to let you guys know that class has started. And also for those who are new, just know we do this every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. And the goal of Black Business School is to make sure that Black first people who put our community first, are the leading economic thinkers on the planet. That's what we're going to make our community into. There's no reason why anybody should be better at wealth than us, because we are the ones who need to understand wealth the most, because we are also having to deal with all this oppression that comes in the form of money, right? So ultimately, in this generation, what we're doing, in case anybody wants to know what the assignment is, what I'm doing with my PhD in finance is I'm basically spending, probably 100,000 hours speaking to as many people in my community as I can to make sure that we're just the best at this. Like there's no reason why we shouldn't be the best. So that's what this is for. In case you wonder why we get up every morning and we do this, and we do this 7 days a week consistently. All right. So here's some details I found on this case of Reshad Jones. It says here, Jones alleged that his advisor, Isaiah T. Williams, misappropriated $2.6 million of his money via 133 unauthorized account withdrawals plus a laundering scheme. So he's alleging that there was crazy stuff being done with his money. And also he alleges that Williams used the stolen funds for personal expenses. Isn't it funny? And this is the thing. In my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I always talk about economic culture, and I really find it really fascinating when you see how many times there are financial issues or fraud cases or arrests or whatever. And in the backdrop, a lot of times there's always like this sort of luxury lifestyle thing going on where people are buying watches that I would never buy, I don't understand why you'd want to buy a $30,000 watch, or just the lavishness, right? And that's cultural. That's very cultural. There are some cultures where they look down on that. There are some cultures where it doesn't matter. You could be worth $100 billion, but if you show up all gaudy, like with 50,000, like I got a chain on. I got a lion chain. My wife has a lioness. That's how we connect. But if I showed up with 40 chains on my neck and said, "Look, hey, this ice on my wrist cost me 100,000. My shoes cost me $8,000." Like that there are some cultures where that is looked at as kind of sad, kind of pathetic, kind of like, what's wrong with you? Like you're engaging in, and I wrote about this in my book. It's called economic immaturity. Economic immaturity is where you got to wear your money and constantly show it off to everybody, and that comes from rappers. That comes from in a rap. Remember, hip hop is not controlled by black people, so does not come from black people. This comes from rappers who are controlled by the white people who run the record labels, right? And so they promote the culture of excessive ridiculousness, clownish economic behavior, very clownish behavior, where literally the goal is to present yourself in the gaudiest way possible. And it just looks ridiculous. You look like a damn fool half the time. And so it's really fascinating to me also how this sort of image of the black man that's really portrayed economically, it permeates. There's so many young kids. Like if you go to Atlanta. I was in Atlanta. Atlanta's one of the gaudiest places you'll ever see. And I was walking down the street and I just saw two little 17-year-olds shooting a music video with a bunch of jewelry on, getting out of a rented Lamborghini and all this other. I got ice on my neck, I'm like, man, how you trying to that's a hard image to maintain. That's an expensive image to maintain. I'm not judging per se. I get it when people want nice stuff. Again, my wife's a little bougie. She drives a Benz. I don't drive a hoopty, right? We go stay in a hotel. A lot of times it'll be a nice hotel. But this idea of sort of wearing your money and vomiting your excess everywhere, that's not even black behavior. Like most regular hardworking black people that are building the community don't behave that way. That's almost a little bit clownish. It's exaggerated behavior. So again, I'm not saying that this is what happened here, but it's interesting that what happens is that when you become addicted to this mindset, you become addicted to this lifestyle. You become addicted to this idea that I want to go get money so I can go down to Jake the Jeweler and get ice. That puts you in a situation of enormous economic pressure. That you're under pressure because now you got to maintain this image. You got to Dame Dash yourself into oblivion. And I would never talk about Dame Dash's private business, but just know I spent a lot of time around this man in 2018, and can tell you my impression was that there's a lot of pressure. I was like, wow, you really have to work hard to maintain this image that you are projecting to the world. I ain't trying to maintain nothing. I have no interest in trying to impress a bunch of people who don't know me, don't care about me, don't care if me and my family are homeless. Why the hell are you trying to impress everybody? Impress your wife. Impress your damn kids. Impress yourself. Don't impress you can't impress anybody with what is out there externally. Impress people with what you have internally. Where's your intellect at, man? Are you improving yourself as a human being? Are you a good person? Are you stepping up for people? Are you reliable? Are you a sturdy human being? What happened to that? Why is that suddenly so old-fashioned? Are you really telling me that with all the hard work and personal development required to become a decent human, I can skip all that and jump to the front of the line just by buying a couple of chains and a fancy watch? Are you serious right now? That's very sad. And what this false hip hop culture has done, and I call it false hip hop culture because, or D1, our good friend the rapper that we supported, we sponsored his tour. You guys know this. The Black Business School sponsored his tour. He calls it hypocritical hop. So in hypocritical hop, you're trained to almost stress yourself out by trying to use the superficial as a way to substitute for that which should be internal. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does everybody get? Do you get what I'm saying? I probably sound like an old man. I'm sure I do. I'm not because I'm not a kid. I'm 54. I'm not 24. So I get it. These are but here's the thing though. Here's the thing you got to understand though. I had a long conversation yesterday with a young lady who's 18 years old who just started college. And what I loved about talking to her is I said, you got to realize that just because you young, that don't mean that your new ideas are the best ideas. Just because you're young and hip and cool, that doesn't mean that every idea that pops into your head is better than the ideas that your grandma and your grandfather could have shared with you about the way they did stuff in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Do you understand? Right? You have to have a transfer of knowledge across generations. You can have the young people bringing new ideas where they say, hey, we should do this differently because this is going to help us get a better result. But then you can have the old folks that come in and say, well, let me tell you how we did stuff in the 1950s when we ran into the same problem because we dealt with racism too. Right. So ultimately, I really find it unfortunate and almost sad and overtly stereotypical that the reason this man has faced this massive lawsuit, and I don't know if criminal charges came out of this. They're using the word fraud a lot. I got to go research it to see if any criminal charges were filed. Is to buy luxury items. They said here personal expenses. Let's see, was it luxury travel, jewelry, hotels, entertainment? Well, they mentioned child support. Well, you got to pay your child support. I had to pay my child support too, so I can't get mad at somebody paying child support. Just don't be taking people's money to pay it. And so, anyway, Merrill Lynch settled with Jones, Reshad Jones. I don't know if he's still in the NFL or not. Does anybody know? Is Reshad Jones still in the NFL or did he retire? I didn't get a chance to look that up. I saw he played for the Dolphins. I think he played for the Ravens. So he must have been a good athlete, or he must be a good athlete because it's hard to play for the Ravens. I wish I could have played for the Ravens. Well, actually, no, I don't, because NFL players get all that brain damage, and it's kind of hard after. It's fun while you're playing, and then like 20, 30, 20 years later, you're 40 years old and you're like in extreme pain, and you've got the brain of an 80-year-old man. So be careful with football. I just have to be honest with you. And I'm a football fan, so that probably makes me a hypocrite. Go Buckeyes, by the way. And also Indiana University, where I met my wife, just as if anyone cares. They just had the biggest win in school history when they went out to Oregon and beat the number 2 team in the country. So that was a big day for me yesterday. That's what I did with my day yesterday. I was watching football. All right. So anyway, reading more in this case. Also, it says that Williams previously voluntarily resigned. Okay, so the guy that's been accused of this financial, what looks like fraud, it could be fraud. He voluntarily resigned from Merrill Lynch shortly before the allegations became public, and was later permanently barred by FINRA for non-cooperation. FINRA is a financial regulatory agency. Let's see here. So the complaint involved claims against Merrill Lynch, including misrepresentations, unsuitable allocations, improper outside business activity, and failure to supervise. So, what can we learn from this? A lot of you at some point may run into a situation where you make a financial arrangement with someone, or you're doing business with someone, or someone's managing your money. So let me just kind of give you some things to look out for. None of this is perfect. We all make mistakes, but a few things you want to consider. And this is actually this is what I would call old school common sense. One is you never hand over full control of your money to anybody. Do you understand that? Give me a yes in the chat if you understand. Never give anybody full control over your money. Do you Are you listening? Do we get that? Give me a yes. Like, just nod yes. Type yes in the comments. Yes, hell yes, absolutely got it. Because the thing is, you just don't know. And maybe the advisor, you can give your advisor some authority to trade on your behalf if you trust the advisor, but you should also review the accounts. And also, you should not give them the authority to withdraw money. It seems like the withdrawal authority is what might have caused the issue here. If you just say, hey, look, don't be taking money out, and I can tell you the reason I think this is good old school advice is because I remember somebody saying that Bill Cosby had that rule. Even when Bill Cosby, before he got involved in all the shenanigans, when Bill Cosby was sitting on $250 million, him and Oprah, actually, these are two celebrities I remember had this rule. They were like, no, any check that gets written on my behalf, I'm going to look over that check and I must sign it personally. I think that's a good way to have a clearinghouse for your economics. And what that is, what Cosby and Oprah were reflecting, and I do think that these are two people that have wisdom in their own way. I do respect them for the most. I never met Oprah. I did. Bill Cosby called me once, and I think he thought that I was. He thanked me for defending him, but I wasn't really defending him. I was just defending truth in the sense that I felt that Cosby should have. There should have been proof. There should have been a little more proof. I felt like there was sort of this idea that, well, because somebody said something, that's definitely what happened. And my wife and I were in Los Angeles, and we met a guy who was a driver for Hugh Hefner. And this driver, he's a white guy named David. I'll never forget it. And David, on the ride to the airport, pretty much told me a couple of things that were really interesting. He said that Hugh Hefner probably did 1,000 times worse than what Cosby ever did. But then he also said, yeah, he said, I knew a lot of the individuals that were in the documentary against Cosby. He said a lot of these women were terrible people, drug addicts and everything else. Now, that does not take Cosby off the hook at all. But it does mean that I think that what happens is that it's sort of like we're going to put this scrutiny on this side, but no scrutiny on the other side, right? The thing is though, Latasha, I'm going to also say though that I don't sit here and pretend like I don't think he made mistakes. I think that that probably I really, I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like sometimes black celebrities get to Hollywood and they really think they're white. They think, I'm not black, I'm OJ, and I can do whatever I want. And I was raised by old school parents and grandparents who said that when you're black, you can't go into those spaces and do what everybody else is doing. They're going to look at you different. You're going to get a different level of scrutiny. And let's just be honest. In the 1960s, drugs are everywhere. Free sex is everywhere. He's Bill Cosby, so when female attention is everywhere. It's easy to get caught up in that, right? And that's why I like that movie Dorian Gray, because Dorian Gray is a movie that reflects something Will Smith said that I thought was really interesting. He said, I wish everybody could get the experience of having everything that they wanted. He said, because then you would find out that happiness doesn't come from external things. Happiness does not come from money and fame and power and a new car. Money comes in, or happiness comes internally. And also that movie Dorian Gray really speaks to literally a guy who made a deal with the devil, which I think some of our black celebrities end up doing effectively to some extent, right? Where they'll sign some sort of cultural contract and get involved in a lot of things where it's like you make a lot of money, but you lose your soul. And I feel like Cosby, in my view, it made me very sad to see an intelligent man swept up in some of that, right? So with Cosby, when he said thank you, I was like, well, you're welcome. But I was thinking to myself, I really think that you made a lot of mistakes. And I really hate the fact that your amazing legacy was just destroyed in broad daylight. I don't look at it as, oh, they lynched this black man. Sure, I think that he did things that a lot of other people were probably doing, but I'm not naive enough to think that something inappropriate may not have happened at some point. So I just had mixed feelings about that. My mother and my mother-in-law, they were so excited. They wanted to listen up. They knew Bill Cosby was going to call me, and I think they don't care. They're like, "Ooh, it's Bill Cosby," so they wanted to be on the phone. So that was kind of funny. But anyway, let me keep going here. So the other thing too, in terms of your money, you should always demand transparency. You should get monthly statements directly from the brokerage. Don't get statements from the advisor. So when you make your 10 million, and I'm gonna bless that on you right now. I'm speaking it into existence for all of you in here. When you get that first 10 million, some of y'all already got it. I know for a fact because I've met some of you directly. But for those of you that ain't got your first 10 million, when you and your family get your first 10 million, make sure you get your statements directly from the broker. Don't get it from the advisor, because the advisors, there have been examples. If you look at Bernie Madoff, anybody remember Bernie Madoff? Am I old? Does anybody remember Bernie Madoff and his Ponzi scheme? So let's not pretend like black people are the only ones who get caught up in this stuff. Bernie Madoff was a Jewish guy, and he robbed the Jewish community, right? I know we want to act like the Jewish community has it all figured out and that everybody's perfect. No, he was going down and ripping off people in his own community. So this is a common thing. This is not just a black thing. And one of the things that happened was he would actually alter the statements. He would change the numbers. And here's the thing. This is these are all financial consciousness conversations. That's why I call this class financial consciousness, because consciousness means awareness. or part of it. That's one aspect of consciousness, awareness. So Oprah and Cosby, that example I gave you earlier about how they would require that they see every check that's written on their behalf. That's consciousness. I want to be aware of where the money's going so I can watch what's happening, right? So awareness, another aspect of consciousness is transparency, getting your statements from the broker as opposed to getting it from the advisor. And what happens though is that the studies show, research shows that when you're making money, your consciousness starts to drop because your dopamine levels have been manipulated, and you're so happy that you're making money that you stop asking those hard questions, right? And what happened with Bernie Madoff is exactly a perfect example of that. Bernie Madoff was able to take advantage of the lack of financial consciousness in his own Jewish community by basically by the fact that people were so excited about how much money they were making that they didn't ask any questions. They didn't say, well, how exactly are you getting these excessive returns? Well, where's this money coming from? Let me see your operation. Why are your returns so consistent even when the rest of the market is struggling? How did you do that? They didn't ask questions. And think about this. Think about how often this goes even beyond money. Think about how often something good will happen and you are so excited that your ship finally came in that you just stop asking the critical questions. Like, ladies, you meet that man, and he's Mr. Perfect. He got the perfect smile. He's tall, dark, and handsome. He got a good job. He's doing real well. He's so nice, and you have an amazing time. And then suddenly your intelligence kind of you stop asking questions because you don't want the fairy tale to end. You don't want to interrupt your fantasy by hating on yourself. This is a great opportunity. Oh my God, I finally met the man that I've been waiting for. Or maybe for men, same thing. A big butt and a smile. Never trust a big butt and a smile. That girl is, so we all of us have these things, right? All of us have these areas where when things show up too good, when it's too good, and we know that things that appear to be too good to be true probably are. We know this in the back of our mind, but because you've been waiting for this opportunity, you've been waiting to make that first million, you've been waiting to meet that beautiful woman, you've always known that great job or whatever it is was going to eventually come into your life. Now that it's here, you just kind of are like, okay, yeah, I want this to be true. So because I want this to be true, my level of scrutiny suddenly drops a little bit. Anybody ever seen that happen before? Your consciousness drops. So ultimately, when people start making money, the way scammers are able to get your money in many cases is they're able to tap into that. They're able to tap into the fantasy. They're able to tap into that dream and vision that you've always had. They want you to believe that, okay, this is it. This is your big opportunity. And if you ask too many questions, you're going to mess it up. Remember, when the devil shows up, the devil's going to show up holding the key to your greatest dream and fantasy. That's how Diddy got all those people to go to those parties, because we know Diddy is the devil. The closest living manifestation to the devil, in my opinion, that there is Diddy. He even dressed like the devil. Did you ever see that where he had an album cover where he's wearing red and he's got I think he's got a pitchfork. He's sitting in a throne like the devil. Like, he looks like the devil. He's got this, I think he has something on his eyes where he look. Anyway, and I compare it to the devil because think about this. Think about how many black people you know, how many young black people you know who fantasize about being a famous rap star, or who fantasize about being around black celebrities. We worship celebrities like they are gods, which is incredibly unhealthy. Think about how many people have been victimized and harmed and exploited because somebody was dangling their greatest fantasy right in front of them. So money's the same way. So when this happens, and you stop asking questions and you let your consciousness drop, and somebody says, hey, you made 5 million, don't ask too many questions, and you don't because you're happy to get the money. Well, this is when they're the bad things are happening in the back door. All right, so let's keep going. When you have an advisor, you got to understand how they're paid. Different advisors get paid in different ways. Some of them, there are some advisors who get a fee, some advisors who get a commission, some advisors get a percentage of your total assets under management. Some advisors get a commission based on how much trading you do. So you just want to make sure you understand how they get paid. I still remember that NBA player who played for the Utah Jazz. I don't remember his name, but he invited me to speak at an event that he was hosting. I was really proud of him. He took his money. You talk about doing good stuff for the community. This guy, he had a multi-million dollar contract because a lot of the players, even the bad ones, make a lot of money now. And this brother held a massive financial literacy event in Oklahoma City. I was so impressed. And so I was one of the speakers he invited in, and we ate breakfast. And he told me that when he signed his contract with his financial advisor, that what they did was they assumed that he was just a dumb Negro that wasn't going to read contracts. They thought that he'd be so focused on the booty and the bling that he wouldn't pay attention when they were robbing him, with the little fees. So he had all these fees in his contract. He said, I had all this fine print, and they didn't understand. Like, my mother and father made sure that I knew how to read and that I would read contracts and that I understand business. So he was like a lot of your kids where he was economically intelligent. His financial consciousness was very high, and he went through the contract. And he was like, "No, you're taking this out, taking this out, taking this out, taking this out." And they're just shocked, like, "Oh my God, you're being so unreasonable." And he's like, "No, I know I got the leverage." He said, I'm 7'1", 240 pounds. There's one of me, and there's like 1,000 of you. I can always find some short little white man to manage my money, but you can't find too many 7'1" black men that can go out here and dunk a basketball like I can. So he knew the leverage was in his favor, and he just said, "Look, if you don't like it, then you can go." And you know what? They folded. They folded. They folded. Shout out to him. I love this, right? So moving on. Um, Also, understanding something called fiduciary responsibility. I don't know if anybody knows fiduciary duty. Fiduciary duty is basically the duty that the other party has to represent your interests, right? So just kind of understanding what that is and maybe looking at that in writing, that should be in the contract. And the fiduciary responsibility is something that allows you to know, okay, what is this person really supposed to do for me? How are they really supposed to represent my interests? And then at that point, that then allows you to be clear about sort of what they're supposed to do from a legal standpoint. And then also when you sign up with some sort of financial advisor, FINRA, the Financial Regulatory Agency, they have a broker check that you can look up, right? So you can look up their name, and the Securities and Exchange Commission has public disclosure of information, so you can find out if there's ever been a complaint filed against that person, that kind of thing. So you can look for complaints or disciplinary action, etc. And so ultimately, when you are talking about letting somebody else manage your money, I can tell you some rules that I kind of follow. Again, nobody's perfect. Everybody can be harmed or scammed. I've had money stolen from me before. It's happened. I've had Facebook pages stolen from me before. I've had all kinds of, it's crazy. I mean, and the thing about it is that with AI, the amount of scamming, the complexity of the scams is just growing exponentially, which is kind of concerning. It's kind of a thing that I'm not sure how to process all that right away. But I can say that a few things you can do is, or a few things, I know what I do. Number one is I don't put all my money with one broker anyway. There's no one person. I have a guy at Merrill Lynch, and he always asks me to transfer all my money to him, and I always say no. It's like, no, I'm not doing that because I just don't want all my money in one place. That's not something I do. Also, making sure when you make that first 10 million, because all y'all, I'm training you to be millionaires. I'm training you all. It's easy to do if you give yourself enough time to do it. So, so we're not just talking about how to get the money. We're talking about how to protect the money. So when you have that 10 million, make sure that every check that goes out the door is signed by you. It's approved by you. Don't have nobody up in your account just doing whatever they want. And, no matter how much you trust that person. And then also, let me just tell you, I uncovered something going on in my own space. I can't talk about it too much because it's too close to home. But you know how it got uncovered was I hired a new person to work with the other person and to review what the other person was doing, and it turned out that there were some things happening that shouldn't have been happening. And I would have saw it if I didn't have someone else come in. And so it's little stuff like that that can happen. So they even say when you run your business, never have one accountant or whatever or financial advisor that's doing everything and approving everything and overseeing their own work. because you need those outside eyeballs in there to kind of say, okay, this doesn't look right. This isn't working. So moving on. Another thing too is, when you talk about, oh, here's another thing too that's really interesting. A lot of companies will not hire somebody to manage money if they have like a gambling addiction, or even if they just are gaudy and excessive in terms of their spending. Like, because luxury lifestyle is a kind of addiction, just like gambling could be an addiction. And ultimately, the reason they don't hire people, if they find out that you have too much debt, or you're too much engaged in gambling, stuff like that, they just know that the temptation is too great. So if you want to ever ruin your life, just in case you're wondering, a great way to ruin your life would be to form a gambling addiction. And you should probably tell your kids, because they're heavily promoting gambling now, like it's fun. And it is fun. It is fun until it's not. It's a lot of fun until it starts going bad. And so just be mindful of that kind of thing, and definitely be careful about doing business with somebody who does too much of that stuff. In fact, I really would say almost that if you are really working with somebody as a business partner, given that trust is so important, I would really look at the kind of person they are. What kind of lifestyle do you live? How do you interact with your spouse and kids, and what do you do in your spare time? Right. So for example, I don't think I would let somebody manage my money if I saw them at the horse track all the time, or if I saw them at the casino constantly, or whatever, or I saw them engaging in some sort of excessive lifestyle that wasn't consistent with the kind of culture that leads to wealth preservation. Wealth is not typically preserved by um, those who are extreme risk takers, right? Wealth is typically preserved by conservative behavior. So ultimately, like for example, I was doing an analysis of J.P. Morgan, the wealthy banker, and one of the things that he even mentioned over 150 years ago is he said, I don't get wealth and power by being loud and taking up newspaper headlines and being excessive. He said, I get wealth with quiet power. Conservative. Like, I speak to who I need to speak to in a strategic way. I position myself properly. I'm thinking he's very conscious of the environment that he operates in, because his goal, JP Morgan, if you know about the type of wealth he had, his goal was not like, I'm going to get some money so I can be flashy or pretend to have power. His goal was to have real power. His goal was not to acquire a business. His goal was to control an entire industry. So he was a very big, broad, systematic thinker. And so systematic thinkers tend to be people that have the most wealth and power. That's one of the reasons why in our Black Millionaires of Tomorrow program, our Black Business School for Kids, we teach kids what we call the STARDY model. STARDY stands for Systems, Technology, Entrepreneurship, Relationships, and Delegation for the youth. STERDY. STARDY is Systems, Technology, Entrepreneurship, Relationships, and Delegation. Those are the things that lead to the development of big institutions and big industries, not some of this stuff that we see where people get money and they flash it on Instagram and all this other silliness that happens. Let's see here. Let's see. What's one more thing that I made notes here that I wanted to share with you. Um, yeah, well, actually, I think my notes are done. So one thing I wanted to mention too is I remember there was this one NFL player, I think it was Clinton Portis, he had the biggest contract in the NFL. He was a great running back for the Washington Redskins. And if I'm not mistaken, he was, and I hope I don't get his name wrong. Let me know if I got his name wrong. But I think he had a major financial issue where he had a financial advisor. He lost a bunch of money, like a lot of it. And if I'm not mistaken, he literally said he was outside this guy's office with a gun, ready to go in there and, do some damage. And I don't think that he did anything, thank God. But anyway, with Clinton Portis, what was interesting to me was when I heard that he had $10 million and the guy lost all of his money, that right there tells me that's a massive red flag. Like, that right there tells me that somebody violated one of the most fundamental rules of investing. The first rule of investing is what? Write it in the chat. Starts with a D, right? Write that word down in the chat, please. It is diversification. Diversification. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you have your money in 30 places, what are the odds that all 30 of those investments are going to go south? Well, in fact, dang it, I wish I had shared it. There's a video I saw with Kevin O'Leary, who's on Shark Tank. Kevin O'Leary, he's a white guy, and he said that his mother, he said, my mother made a ton of money as an investor. And the way she made her money was she had really simple rules. She never took a finance class, didn't go to seminars and all that, didn't come from a bunch of wealth. He said it was real simple. She would buy high quality companies that paid dividends, and she would never put more than 5% of her money in any one company. That was it. It was like that was her rule. She spread her money out. Because if you never put more than 5% of your money in one place, then you're going to have like at least 20 different investments. And the odds of 20 high quality investments all going bankrupt at the same time, that those odds do not exist. That's like lightning striking you 4 times on your way to work tomorrow. That's not going to happen. So one of the things that I see a lot is I will see scenarios where somebody will take their whole life savings and put it into one business, or they'll put a bunch of money into something because they'll say, well, this stock has really been making me a lot of money. I'm going to put all my money in that stock. And I met a guy who he made a lot of money with this, but he said he had 90%, 95% of his money in Tesla stock. And I get it. I understand. You're young, you're wild, you're free. You want that chance to get rich. You want to take those odds. And again, sometimes that works out. Sometimes it does. If you watch America's Team, the documentary about the Dallas Cowboys, I just love it. I talk about all it was so much fun to watch. Well, Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, he said, I put all my money into one oil well, and that oil well made me $100 million. And then I took all my money and put it into buying the Dallas Cowboys, and now Jerry Jones is a multi-billionaire. So there is an argument to say that excessive risk can lead to excessive outcomes 100%. I'm not here to in any way squash anybody's dream of something amazing happening in your life 100%. What I am here to help make sure that you acknowledge, however, is that for every one Jerry Jones that bet it all and became a billionaire, there's 1,000 Jerry Joneses that bet it all and lost everything. Do you understand? Right? So it's really this thing where there's something in statistics. You can write this term down, look it up if you want to. It's a big statistical concept. It's called survivorship bias. Survivorship bias is really deceptive, and it plagues the black community. It really eats you. It's a statistical version of the movie The Hunger Games. Anybody remember The Hunger Games? Okay, tell me if you saw that movie, The Hunger Games. The little girl who was in that movie, the star, she went to my middle school. How crazy is that? My middle school in Louisville, Kentucky, Cameron Middle School. Her family moved out to LA when she became famous. So it's crazy. So wow, just crazy. All right. Anyway, so in the Hunger Games, if you remember, the Hunger Games basically had like all these really poor people and a few elite rich people. And the way the elite rich people controlled the masses of poor people is they would pick 2 people that they would get 30 people that were recruited to compete in the Hunger Games. And in the Hunger Games, out of 32 people, 30 of them would get killed and 2 would survive, right? And so the 2 that survived, they would just lavish them with riches, make them world famous, and then they would tour them all around the world so that all the poor people could get something to aspire to. But here's the thing, while you might aspire to be that person who won the Hunger Games, you probably weren't. You were probably going to die on the battlefield, or you were going to just stay poor, right? But the dream, the fantasy of what was being presented in front of you would get a lot of people sitting there like, ooh, right? And so this is what happens with the NFL and the NBA. Millions of little black boys in poverty and everything else are sitting there, and they're not seeing, the thousands and thousands of black men who tried to make it to the NBA and failed, or the thousands of black men who, wanted to be in the NFL but ended up, as alcoholics or unemployed or uneducated. Or what they're seeing is they'll see their favorite star. And it's really deceptive because if you watch an NFL game, you see nothing but all these super talented black men making millions of dollars. And you're like, wow, there's like 60 of them on this field. I can be one. Everybody, it looks like everybody's going to the NFL. And that's because you're not seeing what's behind the curtain. you're getting the illusion. You're getting fed the Hunger Games. You're seeing the top 1% of the top 1%. If you know anything about sports, I played all the sports. Let me tell you, the guys that make it to the NFL, most of those dudes are superhuman in their athletic ability. Has anybody played sports? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like these dudes they run the 40-yard dash in 4.3 seconds and all this crazy. In fact, this is so funny. Mr. Beast, this white guy who does these great videos, he gets Melissa Jefferson, who's the fastest woman on earth. She's really fast. She ran super fast time and she won the world championships. And he did this really funny video where he said, we're gonna have Melissa Jefferson run against 100 random men. And it happened that all these random men happened to be white. And I laughed when I saw that video because I said, she's gonna blow them all away. Because if you know track and field, you'll know that her time, 10.61, is really fast. Most people can't run 10.61. But here's what I said. Sometimes I'll be trolling in the comments, and I said, how about you have her race against 40 random men from the NFL, right? Because if she ran, or 100 random men from the NFL, I'm not saying that, this is not hating on Melissa Harris Jefferson. I mean, she's amazing, 100%. But if she ran against 100 random men in the NFL, she would get beat by about 30 of these guys. Or 100 random wide receivers. How about that? If she ran against 100 random wide receivers in the NFL, 30 or 40 would probably beat her because these guys didn't run 10.6 seconds of the 100 meters in high school. A lot of them ran 10.5, 10.4, 10.3, 10.2. My best friend, Reggie Wilkins in Louisville, ran 10.3. He broke the state record in the state of Kentucky. He didn't even make it to the NFL. He wasn't good enough, right? So my point is to say that, like, John Trey knows what I'm talking about, right? So my point is to say that sometimes what you see in front of you can be deceptive. Your eyes can deceive you. So when they are parading multi-million-dollar superstar athletes to millions of black boys who all are watching and they're thinking, wow, I can be the next LeBron. It's unfortunate because they don't understand that just the odds of you being big and strong enough to be LeBron are very, very low. Only 1%, probably 1% of 1% of all men even get the chance to be 6'8", 240 pounds. So that right there, the genetic lottery is probably going to eliminate you from consideration. And then if you are 6'8", I got a 6'9" kid in my house. He could barely dunk a basketball. I could probably jump up and block his shot. Right? So you gotta then have the ability and put in all that work to become the kind of athlete that can even compete with those guys. I could send our 6'9" kid to the NBA. I mean, he walks through Chicago. Everybody thinks he plays for somebody because he's so tall. But I just kind of laugh. I'm like, this dude, he's an engineer. He don't know basketball from a bag of Skittles. But it's okay though, because I want him to be an intelligent black man, and he's got so many other great attributes about him that I don't even want him to be defined solely by his athletic ability. I said, man, you're extraordinary in 1,000 ways. So what if you don't play basketball? Go be great at something else. It's probably easier. In fact, I said to him, I said, it's probably easier for you to become a millionaire as an entrepreneur than it is for you to become a millionaire as an athlete. And he's 6'9", right? So my point is to say, at the end of the day, we got to stop letting our kids fall for the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games probably extracts $1 trillion a year in black wealth, because what happens is this. Look, when you live your life, you got one life to live. I had this conversation with an 18-year-old girl yesterday when I was talking to her. Her mom asked me to give her some advice on how to do well in college, so we talked for a while. You know me, I'm full. I told her, I said, look, if you want to listen, I'm full of worthless information. I said, but if it doesn't interest you, then I'm not gonna say anything. But if you want to know, I can tell you. And she said, yeah, I want to know everything. I said, okay. All right, get ready. Here you go. So one of the things I was telling her was, I said, you got one life to live, and your most valuable asset is not money. I said, it's time. I said, you're already a millionaire. You just don't know it. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, how about this? I said, if I gave you $5 million and we went into a machine and I became 18, and in this machine, I became an 18-year-old, but you came out and you were a 54-year-old, would you be willing to do that for $3 million? She said, no. She kind of laughed. And I said, well, that right there tells me that you have at least one asset in your life that's worth over $3 million, which is your youth. And that's powerful, right? That's important. You have time. You have something. I have time too, but not as much time as you. And so that time is an asset. And I said, so the thing about time is that that asset has to be invested like every other asset. And you got to be conscious about how you invest that asset, right? So how are you going to invest your time, right? You're only going to be 18 once. When you're 30, it'll be done. It'll be in the past. You can't go back. So how are you going to invest that time? And that is a daily decision, a daily renewal. It's hour by hour, minute by minute, day by day. How are you going to make that investment, right? And so the reason I bring that up is because when we're looking at little boys, little black boys, they could be anything. They can become president of the United States. They can become CEOs. They can become entrepreneurs. They can become NBA stars, whatever. What's happened is that massive amounts of black wealth gets lost because what they do is they invest their time into trying to win the Hunger Games. They invest that time in trying to be the next LeBron, or they invest that time trying to make it to the NFL, where there's only a certain number of jobs even available for them, even if they're good enough. And instead, I think they should diversify. I think they should be investing that same amount of time into things that are easier for them to be financially successful. Like if our black boys invested the same amount of time into learning business as we invest into learning sports, we would have probably 100,000 more black millionaires within this generation alone, right? Literally, if black boys were challenged, and I encourage every football coach, every mentor, every parent to take this to your sons. Let your sons, nephews, whoever hear this. I challenge them. The same amount of energy and competition and hard work that you put into becoming a great athlete, put that same energy into becoming an economic athlete. Put yourself in position to win the economic Olympics. Prepare yourself for the biggest competition of your life, which is the Super Bowl of Black economics. This is the big game. That's the big arena. That's where the battle goes down. That's where it's really going down. Why? Well, because the economic weakness of the Black community is the number one source of Black oppression, the number one source of Black psychological misery. Economic disparities are the number one reason that you got so many Black people out here stuck, struggling, stressed out, unhappy, depressed, everything else. So to me, that's the ultimate battle, because in that battle, everything's on the line, because not winning that battle means that when you become a man, it's going to be harder for you to be there for that woman, right? That losing that battle means it's going to be harder for you to be there for your kids. Losing that battle means that you're going to have to bow every time a white man walks in the room because you don't have enough economic power to stand on your own 2 feet, right? So ultimately, what I would say is that this is just me, but again, I'm biased. I'm very biased, right? So just if I sound too extreme, just chalk it up to me just being who I am. But what I'm saying to you is that if every black boy and girl, all the kids were really, 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 really made aware of the depth and the intensity of global economic warfare that is thrust upon them from the time they're born, then they would be ready to truly compete. What really bothers me is when I see these problems occur that exist solely due to a lack of preparation. It makes me very sad when I see an unprepared young person. And when I'm thinking, well, who was educating you? Who was preparing you for this? Like, you mean you're an adult now and you didn't know how hard it is to pay bills? You don't know how hard it is to keep a job. You don't know how hard it is out here to just buy things. Like, nobody talked to you about inflation going up, artificial intelligence taking jobs. Nobody got you ready for the battlefield. So all these missiles are coming at your head and you don't even know which direction they're coming from, because nobody talked to you about this. Why in the world are we not talking to our children about economics on a regular basis? Why are we not preparing them for the big battle? I mean, when I see boys on the football field, they're prepared to play football. I see little girls dancing, they're prepared for the dance competition. Well, how about getting them prepared for the ultimate game, the real game? The real game in America, because America is a capitalist society, the real game in America comes down to economics. That is the battle. So are you going to play powernomics or are you going to play strugglenomics? So when I talked to this young lady who's 18, who just started college, I said, big question is, are you going to show up in life prepared? Or are you going to show up in life a day late, a dollar short, trying to play catch up, always struggling, always behind? I said, it's up to you. You got to make that decision. And the thing is that decision is a culture. That decision is a mindset. That is a decision that you will have to make every single day of your life. And I said, I'm here to encourage you. I don't care what anybody else says to you. I said, life can be really, really hard if you're not prepared. but life can be amazing if you are. So you make the decision. Do you want a hard life or do you want an amazing life? Because I said, look, one thing I don't want, because I can, when you tell me you're 18 and you're starting college, I immediately can transfer my brain to exactly where I was. I can tell you what I was doing the exact month that you're in right now. You're in October of the year of your freshman year of college. I remember exactly what my life was like in October of my freshman year of college. And I can tell you that the decisions I made at that stage in life were everything in terms of shaping my future outcomes. In fact, my life today is affected by decisions I made in October of my freshman year of college. So I just want to encourage you to make the right decisions that are going to work for you. And I was so happy that she listened, because so many young people don't want to listen because they're listening to the culture, they're listening to the rappers, they're listening to their dumbass friends. And then next thing you know, when they're 30, 40 years old, they're struggling. And it all started back when you chose not to invest in your future. Investing is everything in terms of success, power, and happiness. Investing is everything. Investing is nothing more than a form of preparation. That's all it is. Investing is everything, and investing usually ain't got nothing to do with money. Investing starts with what you're doing with your time, and then eventually that time turns into money if that's what you want it to be. So all of our kids have to be investors. Have those conversations with your kids. Don't play around, because I'm gonna tell you at the end of the day, and I don't know how this is gonna sound, but the white man ain't playing with you. He is not playing with you. You show up in this society unprepared, they will say, okay, fine, you should go over here with the slaves. We're gonna make you a slave, and that means you're less than human, which means that your suffering means nothing to us. Because if you cared about your own suffering, you would have prepared to avoid it. That's just the reality of life. I don't know how that sounds to people, but that's just what I see. Okay. All right. So let me close up with a couple of things. One thing is, did you guys get a chance to participate in the Black Family Conference this weekend? It was really, I had a great time, and thousands of you came out, and it was amazing to have thousands of people getting together for the sake of our families. And I know the team did a great job. They pulled together all kinds of experts on all different dimensions of family, everything that strengthens the Black family, and I just love that. So I'm glad you guys were there, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. Now next week, and so this is, maybe we can call this like conference season or something, because we actually packed together 3 digital conferences, like kind of within a 6 week period. I don't know why we did it that way, but we're gonna rock it out. So next week is going to be the AI conference. So if you are interested in AI and you want to be prepared, you can go to blackaiconference.com. That's blackaiconference.com. And also the now this one is not free. There is a fee attached because we had to pay some people and stuff like that. But if you want a discount, you can get a big discount. I forgot how much it is, but it's a discount by using the code Black AI Enhanced, all one word. I have no idea why they use such a long code word, but if you type Black AI Enhanced with an ED at the end, again, too long, too long. I got to talk to them about that. Then you can get a discount. So blackaiconference.com. The code is Black AI Enhanced, and you can get a big discount for the Black AI conference. It's going to be digital. You guys can, so that means you can watch from anywhere. And then also, we finally started the AI club, which is the AI Empire Society. So that URL is AIEmpireSociety.com. Micah Smith is running that, so you can feel free to go take a look at that. Micah is one of the best AI experts that I know, and so she's actually going to be running a lot of that. And also, last but not least, those of you that are concerned about what's going on in the stock market or excited about it, I'm excited about it because the market, if you know, the market took a big dip. That's a big opportunity. And so those that are in Prime, I sent you all some stuff this weekend. And so this is a great week because not only is the market down, but also this is earnings season. So a lot of companies are going to be releasing their earnings. So there are just unbelievable opportunities when it comes to income that you can generate from stock options. So those of you that are interested in options, you can text the word options to the number 87948. So text options to 87948, or you can also go to drboyceprime.com if you want to join us in class. drboyceprime.com. I'll send you guys a link. I'm putting some stuff together today. The Moneymaker Grid will be ready this week. And what I actually would say is I believe that participating in the income strategy works really well during earnings season, even though you have that excessive volatility. Now you've got volatility on top of volatility, and so you can either embrace it and just hope for the best, or you can actually sell that volatility, which increases your income dramatically. So believe me, the numbers were pretty impressive when I was going through them this weekend. So drboyceprime.com. All right, so have a good day, everybody. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out. I will see you all tomorrow. And if you're not on the text list for this class, just text the word morning to the number 87948. That's morning to 87948. I'll send you an invitation. Have a good day, everybody. Sonia says the web server is down. Which web server is down? The blackaiconference.com? Let me see here. I'm going to type it in and let's see what I get here. If it's down, then I'll have to send it. No, it looks like it's up. It looks like it's up. So I don't know which server. Let me see. I don't know which server you refer to, but here's what the site looks like, by the way. So you get in here. This is what you should see for the Black AI conference. So there's a lot of stuff here. It's October 18th and 19th next week, and it gives a breakdown of what you experience, who the speakers are. We got a lot of guests coming in, breaking down AI for you. And so we got a VIP day on Friday. And then day 2, we've got some stuff popping in here. There's a lot of presentations from experts. And then we got day 3, which is Sunday. And so you can get your passes down here at the bottom and use that code Black AI Enhanced, all one word. You put that here where it says coupon code. That'll give you the discount. So it's blackaiconference.com. That's the website. And I will text you all